Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Kerin, and I'm with the United States Department of Justice. And it's my great privilege to welcome an esteemed panel. We're here today to talk about the role of intellectual property and the need for better protection. Before I start, I want to thank the Aspen Institute and the German Marshall Fund for organizing this year's Bucharest Forum. It's an honor to be part of it and to have the opportunity to moderate this esteemed panel as we discuss the role of intellectual property and the need for better protection. As I mentioned, my name is Scott Kerin. I'm an international computer hacking and intellectual property advisor, which is a combination project involving the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Department of Justice. I've been a federal prosecutor for 18 years, and I'm based at the U.S. Embassy in Bucharest, Romania, where I work with law enforcement in the region to combat intellectual property theft and cybercrime. Now, joining me today, I want to briefly introduce, we have Michael Ellis. Mr. Ellis is the chairman of the International Intellectual Property Crime Investigators College, which is an Interpol initiative in cooperation with UL. Michael, thank you for joining us. Also with us today on the phone is Mario Polgato, who's the founder and president of GEOX. We also have with us Bogdan Cîinaru, who's an intellectual property crime specialist at EUROPOL. And last, we have Erling Vestergaard, who's an intellectual property enforcement expert with the European Union Intellectual Property Office, also referred to as EUIPO. I also want to thank Vlad Nikolai and his staff for having us and hosting us and getting us set up today. Before I turn over to the panels, I want to start with the issue of when we talk about intellectual property, what is it that we're talking about? And fundamentally, with intellectual property, we're talking about creations of the mind, inventions, literary and artistic works, designs, symbols, names and images that are used in commerce. Most well-known are copyrights, patents, trademarks, and trade secrets. I think, as everyone will acknowledge, the protection of which is vital to economic growth. Intellectual property supports jobs, the arts, sciences, technology. It creates a framework that allows industries and innovation to flourish. Unfortunately, a lack of protection or the theft of intellectual property corresponds to a loss of jobs, damages to the economy, and can in fact result in serious health and safety risks to the population. Now I'll turn over to our panel, and I know through the series of conversations in talking with them before today, we're going to address a series of very serious issues involving the theft of intellectual property, from pharmaceuticals and medical products to recorded music and movies, electronics, pesticides, food and drink, cosmetics, and sporting goods. The estimated trade in counterfeit goods is over 3% of global trade. It results in the loss of billions of dollars to economies all around the world and thousands of jobs. Now today, where I'd like to start is have Mr. Ellis join us first. Now, Mr. Ellis, as it should be noted, is into rugby. He is into rugby and he has a cat. But more important than that, Michael is widely recognized as an expert in international illicit trade involving IP theft and trademark infringement. He has written and presented extensively on the subject and now acts as an international advisor on illicit trade, where he helps initiatives to raise awareness to the influences brought by the involvement of organized crime. He is also the chairman of the International IP Investigators College, which is a learning platform that provides blended learning to over 12,000 students annually. With that, Mr. Ellis, I'd like to turn over to you first.
Thank you very much, Scott, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to speak today. As was mentioned, I'm the chairman of the International IP Investigators College. I was formerly the assistant director head of the Interpol illicit trade unit. I'm very pleased to be able to share some of my experiences gained over the last 20 years being immersed in this, unfortunately, very widespread criminal activity. I've been fighting this illicit trade in its many forms for many years, and I've been very fortunate in being able to help implement effective policies and strategies in all parts of the world. My job today really is to set the scene for those who will follow so that we can better explain to you, if you do not know already, the true nature of IP crime. It was Albert Einstein who said, if I was given 1 hour to save the planet, I'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem and then 1 minute to resolving it. And that's exactly where we are in this space. It's important to rigorously identify and define the scope of the challenges we're facing so that the initiatives that we implement are strategically aligned. So intellectual property theft, trademark violations, smuggling of excisable goods, exploitation of environmentally protected species, theft of cultural artifacts, theft of trade secrets, illicit trade, IP crime in its entirety brings with it the theft of creativity, the theft of innovation. It impacts on research. It impacts on inward investment. It impacts on growth. It impacts on science, on education, on culture, on heritage. It impacts on health and safety of your families, your communities. In real terms, one of the challenges I've faced over the many years is trying to motivate government decision makers at a time when national police maybe have other priorities to deal with rather than the hidden nature of this particular crime. I'm the first to recognize the diversity of the growing challenges in the law enforcement community, from cybercrime to youth crime to trafficking, but all of these are connected in some way to the organized crime groups who are involved in IP theft. To be short and blunt, this is a crime that robs countries of their dignity, their destiny. It's a growing blight that feeds individuals and entities who are working in the shadows of normal business. As you'll hear shortly, in the online environment, criminals are engaged in the exploitation of copyrighted contents, movies, music, video games, books, software, and they employ several business models to generate their illicit revenues. In the physical environment, they're engaged in the commercial sale of illicit goods and IP infringing goods, conducting illicit, illegal operations with no concern for the economic competitive in your own legitimate business environments, or indeed the livelihoods of your own creative communities. So what can be done? In my experience, to fight against this crime, you need a multifaceted whole of government approach, one that maximizes partnerships between agencies, law enforcement, governments, private industry, trade associations, and civil society, as well as trading partners all over the world. Law enforcement communities on their own, unfortunately, don't have the time or resources to deal with this. So we have to encourage voluntary initiatives among private sector stakeholders, which is just as important in this strategy to fight this particular crime. My experience tells me that where countries and nations and national authorities work towards greater cooperation, greater advocacy, both nationally and across in the international community with greater partnerships, then we will find a more structured approach to this particular crime. In closing, there is an importance, of course, to training, and you've heard that I'm the chairman of an international IP crime investigators college. The college is a resource, a fully interactive online training facility that aims to equip investigators with the skills necessary to effectively combat transnational and international organized crime. It's a free resource. It's free to law enforcement, free to judges, free to prosecutors and stakeholders and other stakeholders. So very quickly, that's for me trying to set the scene. Thank you for your time.
Michael, thank you very much. And thank you for highlighting the IP Crime Investigators College. I've certainly benefited from the classes, and I would encourage anyone that has the ability to log in to do so. Our next panelist I want to highlight is Mario Moretti Poligato. Mario is the chairman of the Geox Group, which is ranked the #1 footwear brand in Italy and one of the premier companies worldwide in the lifestyle casual footwear segment. The group counts 30,000 employees, direct or indirect, and the company is listed in the Milan Stock Exchange since December of 2004 and sells its products through 1,000 mono-brand stores located in more than 110 countries. In 2002, he was named the Best Italian World Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. And in 2010, he was named Innovator of the Year by CNBC European Business Leaders Awards and the Financial Times. He personally dedicates much of his time to making lectures on intellectual property in schools and universities, both in Italy and abroad. I know he is a great supporter of the Aspen Institute, and bringing in a private sector approach today, we welcome him. Mario, if I can turn it over to you briefly. Okay. Well, it looks like, unfortunately, Mario is having some internet connections issues, as is one of the new realities of this world that we live in during the COVID-19, fortunately. Sometimes our technology has some glitches in it. But with that, we'll wait for Mario to be able to log in. But what I'd like to do is go to Bogdan Cîinaru right now. Bogdan, if you're ready. Now, for the audience that's out there, I want to highlight a little bit. Now, Bogdan represents EUROPOL, the IPC3, which is the Intellectual Property Crimes Coordination Center. He graduated from the Police Academy in 2007. So whenever I hear that, he just makes me sound old because he's younger than I am. Now, where he achieved his bachelor's in law degree, he joined the Economic Crimes Investigation Department from the Romanian police, where he investigated intellectual property infringements and other economic crimes, such as gambling offenses, excise frauds, tax evasion, and customs fraud. Since 2012, he joined the IPR Department of Economic Crimes and concentrated his efforts particularly on internet offenses, where he actively investigated cases involving illegal IPTV streaming, torrent websites, and illegal commerce. And since June 1st of 2016, he joined Europol's IPC3 as an expert, where he's dealing with the development of both strategic and operational projects carried out in the online area of intellectual property rights. Bogdan, thank you very much for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Scott, also for allowing me to be present here. It is also a pleasure for me to speak together with the rest of the panelists, because I know most all of them, and we work together so far, and we'll work for sure in the future. This time, I would like to a little bit to highlight the importance of the pandemic, the intellectual property in the pandemic time, and that's why I want to highlight how the criminals adapted during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and what we managed to do as a team at Europol, and what we achieved in this period, since, as you know, during this period it was a challenge both for the law enforcement authorities. Many of them, they needed to concentrate on the, in general, on the public order instead of taking care of other types of crime. And the same for us. It was quite hard to work since we had a lot of lockdowns all over the Europe. We had not all the law enforcement authorities available to work with us, and it was a challenge. However, I will start by presenting the challenges that appeared after the pandemic, somewhere in the beginning of March, almost all over Europe. And we observed that the criminals started to take a look on the pharmaceutical and the health care products. And also they observed that the people are in many countries there were lockdowns, so people were not allowed to travel anymore. So the criminals also on the online site, they tried to move all their illegal businesses on the online area, so to be harder to be detected and to be able to hide their illegal activity. And as you know, the websites were offering from the beginning a lot of pharmaceutical products and healthcare products, the criminals tried to adapt on the new uh, uh, demands of the population. People were feeling anxious. They were staying home. They do not know what would come up, and they started to look on the news. And of course, the criminals did the same, follow the news, and afterwards they were starting to offer. And we noticed that most of the counterfeit products that were offered during this period, they were medical equipment, especially face masks, fake corona test kits, gloves, sanitizers, also pharmaceutical products. Whenever a new pharmaceutical product was advertised in general all over the media, immediately on the internet you can see a lot of offers, a lot of products that could treat malaria, for example. We had a very famous medicine that started to be counterfeited all over the Europe. And in general, we tried to identify to see if the products were originating, and we managed to identify that the majority of the counterfeit products were shipped from Asia, and especially from China and also from India. We noticed a lot of products, and also we saw that websites were created during the pandemic, and this kind of website try to address specifically to consumers by using indexes like nCoV 2019 coronavirus instead of inside of the indexing inside of the URLs, to be able to be identified more easily by the consumers, and afterwards to try to deceive the consumers by offering them cures that would never cure in the end the COVID. And also we identify a lot of websites that are also trying to scam the consumers by telling them that they are offering products, but in the end they're already directing to different other websites, and the consumers were never receiving any kind of cures. Also, we saw a lot of offers on the face mask, counterfeit face masks as everywhere, branded face branded products that with brands that never gave their agreement to produce this kind of products or to sell this kind of products. And also we saw that the criminals started to increase the using of virtual currencies as a payment method. Also during the lockdown, around at least 100,000 websites in Europe were created per week. Also, criminals were offering discounts. So if you are paying with virtual currencies, which was for them a better way to hide themselves from the law enforcement authorities, you are getting a discount as an user. Furthermore, we identified a lot of platforms that were abused during the online platforms like Telegram, WhatsApp, that were used by the criminals in order to promote their criminal activities or to promote their online shops or other websites that are related to different counterfeit pharmaceuticals. And another interesting part, it was the offer of the pirated content in general. This time the demand increased since the population was staying inside of their houses. So we saw an increase of the digital platforms that were offering digital content in general, as torrent websites, cyber lockers. Popcorn Time appear again in Europe. This time it was created better. It had more options for the consumers. And of course, we do not need to miss the IPTV streaming, which increased a lot. There were different offers during this period. Criminals were increasing, of course, their offers. They were giving different fees if you are subscribing during the COVID crisis or if you are a health worker. And also, last that I want to mention, it was the darknet market. where we saw a high increase of the pharmaceutical products in general. Many sellers were creating their own online platforms on the .onion website, and also many of the potential buyers later became sellers on the domestic market, the euro. And to fight against this together with my team, we try to focus on all these issues. So, as you know, related to the pharmaceuticals, we started Operation Shield, where almost all the countries in Europe were involved, and also we had a lot of other countries from all over the world that were part in this operation, where we try to identify the sellers of counterfeit pharmaceuticals, the illicit pharmaceutical products in general all over the world, and the result will appear in about 1 month. The operation is almost ended now. We need only to collect the results, so I cannot tell you more. In relation with operation with the IPTV, we had the action day on the 3rd of June of Operation Atria. Only to make an idea how much these criminals gained during the crisis. During this period, on the 3rd of June, we arrested 11 individuals in Spain, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and in the end, we seized 4.8 million of euros from the criminal, which was representing assets as cars, buildings bought by the criminals from the illegal subscription of the IPTV. Also, during this period, we had Operation Aphrodite. In the framework of Operation Aphrodite, we managed to take down 123 social media accounts that are offering different products related to the COVID-19. Also, there were 800,000 counterfeit items seized. So, extra to mention that we managed to seize also 27 million face masks with the help of Italian Guardia di Finanza. They did this raid, and also additionally we had the Operation Sundance together with the United States and also Romania, since the forum is hosted in Romania with the Romanian authorities, and we managed to take down dealing with current crime. So as you see, during this crisis, we try to focus as much as we put on the, and also we tried to so this is on my behalf. I speak even more, but I try to be as short as possible. I would prefer to receive the questions from the audience. Thank you.
Bogdan, thank you very much, and thank you for highlighting particularly the issues that have arisen during the COVID-19 pandemic, and highlighting all the amazing law enforcement action that Europol's been involved in. I want to go next to our next panelist. Mario is still having some issues connecting. Our next panelist is Erling Vestergaard. Now, Erling's been a Dutch lawyer for almost 32 years, more than 20 of those serving as a Danish prosecutor. And since 2006, he specialized in intellectual property crime. From November of 2014, he has worked for the European Intellectual Property Office, where he has taken a special interest in internet-related issues and the impact of new disruptive and transformative technologies. As with the other panelists, Erling is truly an expert in the issue of intellectual property crime. Erling, let me turn it over to you briefly.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. And wow, it's easy to follow up on the first two interventions. Just the listing of all these new technologies that have been applied during the COVID crisis by the criminals to commit intellectual property crime, that was fantastic. And I think the impact of technologies are relevant both, as Mike said, in the physical world and in the online world. And they are combined world because there is a connection between those two always. We see right now a rise of more new technologies than the world has ever seen before. We've always had technological developments, but it's never been more rapid than now. And we need to understand that all new technologies can be used as tools for criminal activities as well as means of enforcement. No technology is purely good or purely evil. It always is a double-edged sword. And we need to understand these new technologies deeply if we want to be able to foresee the kinds of infringements and the kinds of threats that we're facing, and if we effectively are going to do something about it. Be vigilant, be at the forefront, be early, and be skeptical, I think is a main message when we're dealing with new technologies. We have tried in the EUIPO to develop different tools and means to understand the impact of new technologies. Right from the first exploration of a new technology for a practical application, the conversion of the technology into something practical, the weaponization, and the final exploitation. Let me give a few examples of the impact of some of these new technology on the protection, infringement, and enforcement of intellectual property. With blockchain technology, we can see the potential for effective worldwide, easily accessible, instantly updated and secure registries of intellectual property, whether trademarks, designs, or patents, or any other kind of registered rights. These new technologies pose a fantastic opportunity for tying together the world landscape of protection of IP much better together. For the infringing sides, emerging threats coming up in virtual environments, augmented reality, are already beginning to pose threats, and with the emergence of higher internet speeds, with 5G networking, and the ability of processing enormous amounts of data, we will see new kinds of threats against IP. And of course, with artificial intelligence and blockchain, the machines can commit crime themselves without even an immediate order from a physical person. Artificial intelligence poses fantastic opportunities for enforcement of intellectual property. We can calculate and foresee actions, and we can make the responses more effective. Interoperability between different technologies is also key. But of course, it raises both technological and policy issues. Technological about processing capacity, connection speeds, but for policy, the access to data. Without reliable data, we are not able to exploit these new technologies. And that goes for both public institutions, law enforcement agencies like Europol and any other law enforcement agency, international organizations and private companies and entities. And we have to strike the right balance in the ability to access and process the relevant data in the fight against crime. But of course, at the same time, respect the fundamental rights that needs to be respected always, the freedom of expression, the right to data protection, and the right to a fair trial. Of course, these new technologies will create endless amounts of new ways of presenting evidence. And we have to make sure that the tools for collecting these evidences, processing them, and presenting them at the end of the day in a court of law, that they comply fully with all the democratic principles that we find so central in our societies. We will face a lot of challenges, but we will also have a lot of opportunities with the new technologies in the future. Those will be my opening remarks.
Erling, thank you very, very much. And thank you for also highlighting that need to protect fundamental rights, given that inherent tension that sometimes arises between the growth of technology and human rights in society. Now, I'm not sure if Mario has joined us. Mario, have you been able to join us yet? Okay. I think Mario is still trying to connect. But what I'll do is I'd like to start asking some questions. I mean, some have been raised by others, and some are questions that we wanted to talk about. Michael, I actually wanted to start with you since you've been quiet for a little bit.
Yeah.
Michael, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, from your experience, what have you seen involving the theft of trade secrets? And first of all, like, what is a trade secret, and what have you seen in terms of how it affects Europe?
Okay, so what is a trade secret? Inventors, companies, businesses who are trying to be creative will have a series of protection built around that creativity, de facto a trade secret. So let's say, for example, a medicine. We spoke about medicines earlier. So a medicine doesn't suddenly hit the market. There'll be a whole series of patent protections or trade secrets around the development of that. Let's take another example. Innovation, very topical, innovation around batteries, alternative power sources, lithium batteries. We're looking at an age of driverless cars, driverless machinery. These need to be powered. So the innovation around batteries, for example, will bring with it a series of trade secrets. If those secrets are stolen by some criminal group, then of course that will impact on the creativity, it impacts on the innovation, it impacts on the research, the investment, the growth, and it directly impacts on the science that is trying to be developed. And let me close by saying, imagine that you steal a trade secret that hasn't been completed properly, and you then build that trade secret that you've stolen into a new device, but it hasn't been correctly tested. And then that product is released onto the market to be used by consumers. It is faulty and it is dangerous. The same as IP theft, the theft of trade secret kills people. It will kill people. Quick answer.
Yeah, no, Michael, and thank you for highlighting that. I remember reading, it was a PricewaterhouseCoopers and European Commission study that I know you're familiar with, that estimated the cyber theft of trade secrets alone is estimated to cost Europe over $60 billion or 60 billion euros in terms of lost economic growth, hurting competitiveness, jobs, as well as research and development. I mean, it's truly astronomical. Bogdan, if you have a moment, what I'd like to ask you about is, you highlighted, thank you, a number of the things that you and Europol has been involved in. But one thing I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about is, there's something else that Europol created, and I think it was just early this summer, the European Financial and Economic Crime Center. What is that, and how is that able to help here in Europe?
Indeed, I'm pleased to announce that in June this year, we managed to create the new European Financial and Economic Crime Center, the EFEC. You'll hear you'll hear from us and about us in the upcoming months, years. This is a new concept. We consider that Europol that all the economic crimes could be investigated better if they are having everything as an horizontal approach, and if everything is under the same umbrella. So this new operational center, we have the economic crime, the financial crime, and the counterfeiting, all of them together. As you know, sometimes you can find, for example, for doping substances like steroids, counterfeit steroids used by the different people involved in sport activities as cycling. Sometimes you can find relation with organized crime, with corruption, with illegal gambling, and that's why sometimes it's better to have all these units under the same umbrella. So in this center we have all other units that can support also the intellectual property crime in the fight of intellectual property, the fight against crimes of intellectual property crime. So we have teams that can deal with suspicion transactions. Sometimes, as you know, we can have a money laundering connected with IP crime. We have other types of like missing trade fraud, and sometimes could be in connection with the same criminal group that is also counterfeiting products. So that's why this new financial center can cover better all the criminal activities under the same umbrella. So beside of the financial crime, we can have counterfeiting, we can have economic crime. So in the end, we consider that having all the teams together and working under the same framework will help us to better deal with all kinds of economic crime in general.
Scott, we've lost you. We've lost your sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Back.
All right. No, Bogdan, thank you for highlighting all that. Erling, I want to ask you a question because you focused on the role of technology and how things are changing. It appears that over the years, there's been a shift in intellectual property theft that's gone to a lot more of small containers. E-commerce is emerging as a bigger idea or a bigger thing. Can you explain what have you seen in terms of the impact of new emerging technologies on e-commerce, small packages, and particularly in the light of what's happening with the COVID situation?
Well, that's a brilliant question, and many European countries have over the last 5 years seen an explosion in e-commerce and in the amount of postal packages containing one or very few items. Some countries have seen growth of more than 300%, and a lot of these packages are arriving from areas outside of the European Union. I think the Corona crisis have pushed a development that would have happened anyway, a shift from traditional retail shops to e-commerce, but it has really pushed that development, and I don't think that shift will stop now. I think we will see a continued growth in e-commerce, and it definitely raises a lot of questions in regards to infringement and enforcement of intellectual property. For the legal commerce, no problem at all. But when we are seeing the illicit trade in e-commerce, it's more complex to do action against 1,000 pairs of shoes if they come in 500 different postal packages than in one container that has 1,000 pairs of shoes. It just quite simply is a whole other kind of challenge. So we need to identify the structures behind the e-commerce, the illicit e-commerce, and the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, and hit that because we cannot run after each and every postal package. One piece of technology, I think, or a combination of technologies that will be very interesting to explore in the future in regards to products that are being sold over e-commerce is better tracking technologies and better means of identifying whether a good is genuine or not. And the combination of nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and blockchain will definitely, when explored, give us some new tools in the ability to identify whether a postal package contains an infringing good or whether it is a legal product.
Thank you, Erling. Let's see, Mario, have you been able to log in? Mario, are you there? Okay, it looks like Mario still hasn't been able to join us yet. So now a couple of you have mentioned the issues of virtual currency. I mean, Erling, you've mentioned blockchain a couple times. Bogdan, you've talked about virtual currency. How much have you seen virtual currency being involved with the theft of IP? And that's just to everyone in the panel. And then what I'll also let is, since we only have a couple minutes left, I'll let each of you have about a minute to summarize anything you want to say to the audience.
For cryptocurrencies, I think, no, I can make a quick one and then Mike can follow. For cryptocurrencies, I think there are specific areas where you see more use of cryptocurrencies. I don't think it's happening very much in traditional e-commerce. It's mostly the traditional means of payment that are being used. But for the trade secret area, that is an area, the theft of trade secrets and the sharing of trade secrets, that is an area where cryptocurrencies are used extensively.
Okay. Okay, we have about 2 minutes. Erling, any last thoughts?
Yeah, well, just one last thought. Everything we talk about here ends up in a question of reliable evidence. So I think what we really should focus on in the future, when we are meeting new technologies and new threats, is abilities to secure reliable, dependable evidence that can be presented in a court of law by a prosecutor and secure good convictions. I think that will be the main challenge for us as technology evolves.
As a prosecutor, I agree. Bogdan, 10 seconds. Last thoughts.
I don't know what to say in only 10 seconds. We can say that we are trying to keep up with all the technology. We are trying to, I forgot to tell you that inside of the new EFEC, we have also an online team which is dealing only with IP crime issues. So that's why in relation with the new technology and the virtual currencies, we are trying all the time to be at least one step in front of the criminals and to try to see all their movements. And
Okay.
this is everything for me. I will let also to Michael for a short.
Michael, you get the last word.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just to wrap up, I said at the beginning, you need to define the scope of the challenges. So literally just in this call between us, we've spoke about links to IP crime, corruption, cybercrime, money laundering, banking fraud, financial crimes, unlawful deaths caused by fake pesticides, fake food, baby food, alcohol, fake wire, cables, pipes in buildings, fake semiconductors, cement, medicines, malaria, river blindness, contraceptive, fake cancer drugs. Imagine the consequences. That's the scope of the challenge. So now we're talking about solutions. Erling, Bogdan, some great cases, 4.8 million euros seized, 300% growth in e-commerce sites, hundreds of social media accounts taken down. That's the scope of the challenge. The solutions, I agree with Erling, the solutions are coming around the technology and we need that very fast. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. Thank you, Erling. Thank you, Bogdan. Thank you for everything. Thank you to the Aspen Institute. I hope that in this panel, this is certainly the theft and the need to protect intellectual property is vital. It's vital to human health and safety, as well as functioning and growing economies, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. And hopefully you've seen the importance of intellectual property today with this esteemed panel, and not only the need to protect intellectual property, but what's being done out there in the law enforcement and in the private sector to deal with the issue. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I think that's the end. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.